will get going straight away. This is the third time, I think now, I've done a webinar on the job retention scheme, and so the government keep giving us a little bit more information as to how it works, and we're continually passing that information on to you. So at the moment, let me just share my screen so you can see what's going on. Oh, before we start, can I ask everyone just to put their mics on mute so that we don't hear any background noise from all of your various living rooms or wherever you're listening in. Okay, so we're on the COVID-19 job retention scheme. This is the government's grant scheme for employers when they want to furlough their employees. And this is our update that we've done hot off the press today on the 2nd of April. As I say, this is the third time we've done this, and each time we have a little bit more information from the government as to what's going on. So what are we talking about here? Well, first of all, if you want to see the guidance, I've given you the link to the guidance here. The guidance itself gets updated quite regularly by HMRC, and the last time it was updated was on the 26th of March. Now let's have that guidance will be all these notes will be available at the end, so you don't need to note down that guidance at this stage. We'll send on the guidance to anyone that leaves their email address in the chat box at the end. The thing about the guidance is it's not legislation, it's just guidance at this stage. So the guidance could change in the coming days or weeks, and probably will change in the coming days or weeks as more peculiarities appear from the way the government have set up the scheme. The scheme was obviously set up in a rush. That's apparent from the fact that some of the terms in it aren't even in UK legislation. And so as it goes forwards, various holes or missing parts are becoming apparent, and the government are trying to update the guidance to give us the information to make those sort of queries cleared up. I have heard of one large employer that's actually not doing anything with furloughing their staff at the moment until this becomes legislation. So you do have to bear in mind, if you do something with your staff now and this guidance never becomes legislation, so you do pay the staff their furloughed salary and the guidance never becomes legislation, it could be that you never get back the subsidies for the furloughed staff. I think that risk is low, but certainly I've heard of one pretty large employer actually doing that. Right, we'll move on. Who can actually claim the subsidy? Well, I'm talking from small business for all intents and purposes, and it's an employer of a small business that will claim. It's the employer, not the employee. It's any UK business with employees. That'll include businesses. It'll include charities, and it will include recruitment agencies if they've got agency workers working through PAYE. I know we've had a couple of cases where that's actually been the case. So it will include those temps on temporary contracts. You must have started a PAYE scheme before the 28th of February, and you must have a UK bank account. So if you started up on the 1st of March, just before this crisis occurred, you're not going to qualify for the subsidy for any of your employees. So this will only apply for employees on your payroll before the 28th of February 2020. Are all the employees eligible? Well, pretty much so, with one exception. Any of your full-time employees, the job retention scheme is applicable to. Any of your part-time employees, any employees on agency contracts, any employees on flexible working hours or 0 hours contracts, they're all eligible to be part of the job retention scheme. So this means that your employees don't have to be full-time, they don't have to be part-time, they could be working 0 hours contracts. You may well be able to help anyone that's working for you under this scheme. The scheme also covers employees that you might have made redundant after the 28th of February if you decide to rehire them now. So it also includes those. Are all employees eligible? I've said you've got to be on the payroll on the 28th of February 2020, and to receive a subsidy, you must be furloughed. I'll explain what furloughed means in a little while, and you must be furloughed after the 1st of March 2020. So the only people we can see that aren't eligible to join the scheme in terms of employees would be employees that you took on after the 1st of March 2020. Those employees wouldn't be eligible to join the furlough scheme. So if they were in the unfortunate position of taking someone on in March, and certainly I've seen one particular case of one of our clients where they offered a job to someone who had a job at their previous firm for 19 years. They offered them a job in January. That employee gave 2 months' notice to his employer and started in March 2020. Almost immediately, this was an estate agency, almost immediately the estate agency closed down, and the employee is not going to be eligible to be furloughed because he wasn't on the payroll before 28th of February 2020. So there are people that are falling outside of this scheme, and it might be that the guidance helps some of those people and the legislation gets altered for some of those people as it goes forwards. Okay, now we're going to move on to what furloughing actually means. In terms of furloughing, you furlough your employees, and what that actually means is you're going to put your employees on temporary leave, but you're going to retain them under their employment contract. Before this guidance and before all these incentives came from the government, the only option to you as small business employers was to lay off your employees. You could either keep them on and pay them, but if you weren't working, that was pretty difficult, or going to be pretty financially difficult to do. Or you could lay the employees off. If you laid them off, you'd have to pay notice and redundancy if that applied, but they were your only two options. Then on the 20th of March, the Chancellor stood up and he announced this subsidy for businesses. And as part of the subsidy, he announced that you could furlough employees. We had no idea at that stage what furloughing meant. And in fact, we had to look to American labour law to find out what it meant. There's no mention of it in UK law. It's actually a term in American labour law. And so what we're doing when we're trying to decide at the moment what furloughing actually means is using that American labour law, using what the Chancellor was trying to put in place, and then making our best guess as to what furloughing means. Ordinarily, the word would have gone through a few court cases, judges would have talked about it, we'd have a very definite meaning for it. But I think it's been pretty universally accepted that what we're talking about here is, rather than laying off your employees and then hiring them sometime in the future, the government are going to allow you to put them on a temporary leave. They're not going to be working on this temporary leave. You're going to put them on temporary leave. You're going to retain them on their employment contract, and at some stage in the future, you're going to bring them back to work when the COVID-19 crisis is all over. To receive a subsidy when you put your employees on furlough, your employee cannot undertake work on behalf of your organisation. So you can't put someone on furlough and then ask them to work for you. You can't put someone on reduced hours or reduced pay and expect them to be furloughed. It's an all or nothing route. You're either going to lay your employees off and stop them working and furlough them and get a subsidy, or you're not, and you're not going to get a subsidy. So it's an all or nothing. It's no good if your employees working on reduced hours or on reduced pay. They won't be eligible for this scheme. They have to be not working altogether. When we're talking about work, we're talking about providing services or generating income. Your employees can, under the guidance, do voluntary work, and they can undertake training when they're on furlough. But you must be careful. None of this is generating any service for your company or any income. So we're really talking of going off doing something completely voluntary that's nothing, they're going to produce nothing for the company, or carrying out some training that is definitely not producing any service or any marketing service or any financial service for your company, or generating any income. So for all intents and purposes, I think if you want to be safe to make sure that your employees are furloughed, you've got to accept that you're going to put them on leave and you're going to not ask them to come to work. The big question is, can directors be furloughed? When we last spoke last week, we were thinking it was possible because you could divide up a director's duty between the duties of being a director and the duties they might do as an employee. I don't know, you might be a director of your own electrical company, and in one hand you're doing the director's duties, in the other hand you're being an electrician. We were sort of working around it to see if we could get directors furloughed, and then very fortunately on the 27th of March, someone from HM Treasury, Ben Kerry, stood up at a CBI webinar and said that it was perfectly possible for directors to be furloughed. I've left his quote in the notes here, but basically he's saying, yes, you can be furloughed as long as you're not doing any fee-paying work for your company. All you're doing is the statutory duties as a director. So you can't be furloughed if you're going to go off and do your electrical contracting, that sort of thing. If you were an electrician, you can't be furloughed if you're going to do that. You've got to stop all your fee-paying work. So this would work if you were, for example, a director of a small restaurant or cafe, and the restaurant or cafe was closed. Then you would be left to just do your director's duties, nothing to do with a restaurant or cafe, and you could be furloughed. What you've got to realise, if a director is furloughed, in terms of the subsidy you're going to receive back from your company, it's only going to be on your PAYE salary. It's not going to be on your dividends. So the majority of small business owners will pay themselves a mixture of salary, perhaps up to the personal allowance limit, or a little bit below that, the national insurance limit, and pay themselves the rest of their income as dividend. Now, the only bit that you're going to get any subsidy from the government on is that PAYE salary. So you're going to get perhaps 80% of £12,500. But again, you mustn't be working to get it. So directors, I know someone asked me beforehand, can they be furloughed? Yes, they can, but you must not work to be able to get it, and you will not get the subsidy on your dividends. There are a number of petitions going on at the moment, trying to argue that the small owner, shareholder, manager of small businesses are not being looked after by the government. The government have introduced the job retention scheme for all of your employees. Your employees can get up to £2,500 per month for not working. The self-employed, these are sole traders not operating through limited companies. They can get up to £2,500 per month, and in addition, still go. But as a director, shareholder of your own company, the most you might be able to get is £576 a month if you don't work, and you pay up to the national insurance limit via PAYE, or £832 a month if you if you don't work and you pay yourself up to the personal allowance, the £12,500 allowance. That is the most you're going to be able to get out of the job retention scheme for yourself. But it is possible for directors to be furloughed and to receive something through the job retention scheme. I'm going to move on now to what do I need to do to furlough my own employees? Well, furloughing is part of a change to the employment contract. So first of all, you've got to talk about the opportunities, what you're going to do to your employees as part of amending their employment contract. There are really three options that can happen here. Firstly, you can retain your employees and carry on working. If you did that, you'll pay them in the normal way, deduct tax and national insurance from their pay in the normal way, and you will not receive a job retention subsidy. Secondly, you could lay off your workers. That will be subject to them receiving a notice or redundancy that they're entitled to, or the equality and discrimination laws will all apply in the usual way, the same as if you were ending any employee's contract. So you could lay them off, and that would be the end of the contract. You would deal with the notice and redundancy, and that will be the end of it. The employee would then obviously not get paid by you any further. That particular route, which was what was happening a lot before the Chancellor stood up on the 20th of March, was causing a real problem at the universal credit centres. There was no way that they were going to be able to cope with the number of employees being laid off. And I think that's why the Chancellor stood up on the 20th of March and announced the ability for you to put your staff on temporary leave, and he would pay up to 80% of their wages, the furloughing agreement. Now, to furlough your staff, which is a third option, you need to have a written agreement. We have prepared a template that's free of charge for you to use. This template runs through what we consider needs to be in the furlough agreement. Please bear in mind that we're not lawyers and we're not specialist HR consultants. So we've produced our template for our clients and anyone else listening in on this webinar that wants to use it. It's completely free of charge to use. But if your employees are of a particular sort, it may well be that you should be going off to your HR consultants or your employment lawyers to look at your own template. We're hoping our template will be sufficient for the purposes that are required here, but if you've got any doubts, I suggest you go off and speak to your HR consultants or an employment lawyer over the furlough agreement. There is a need for the furlough agreement to be in writing, and it does need to be agreed between you and your employee. HMRC state this. They say to be eligible for the subsidy, employers should write to their employees confirming that they've been furloughed and keep a record of the communication. So it's quite important that this particular document is sent to your employees and it is acknowledged by your employee as to what they want to do. In our template, there is a choice. The employee can take up furloughed leave, or they can follow the redundancy route. I think you have to, when you're amending an employment contract, you've got to give the employee more than one choice, and so they're the two choices that are in our template. And then I'm going to go on to how much subsidy the employer will receive. As the employer, if you do furlough your staff, you're going to receive a grant from HMRC. So this is going to be money to you. It's not a loan, it's a subsidy, it's a grant to you to fund up to 80% of the employee's regular wage, or to a maximum of £2,500 a month, plus any associated employer's national insurance and the minimum auto-enrolment pension contributions on that subsidised wage. So in terms of what you're going to receive, it's up to 80% of the employer's wage, maximum of £2,500, but then you're going to add in your claim for subsidy the employer's national insurance and the minimum auto-enrolment pension contributions. Fees, bonuses, commissions shouldn't be included when you're doing the calculation for subsidy. And so when we come on to talk about what you might offer your employees, we won't include those in there either. At a minimum, employers must pay their employees the lower of 80% of their regular wage, or £2,500 a month. If they want to receive the subsidy, and employers can choose to pay more than that, but they're not obliged to under the scheme. So you could choose to pay your employee exactly their normal regular salary. The only difference is you'll only get 80% of that back from the government. Obviously, the big question we've had from lots of our small business owners is, how do I remain cost neutral if I decide to furlough my staff? Because the other option is to lay them off, and obviously laying them off, there's no further cost for them. But looking at the scheme, you want to keep on your staff. You want them all ready for when you start up after COVID-19. How do you remain cost neutral? But to remain cost neutral, you've got to offer the staff 80% of their normal regular gross pay, up to a maximum of £2,500. In terms of how you would calculate this, you can, if their regular pay is straightforward and always the same, you could use the February 2020 gross pay as their regular pay. When you use that, you must exclude any fees, commissions, bonuses, because they won't be part of any subsidy that you get back. But if you used an employee's regular pay on February 2020, and that pay was, let's say, £2,000 a month, if now you decided that you would offer them to go on furloughed leave, you'd offer them 80% of that £1,000, you'd offer them £1,600 a month, then that would be the figure that you would also claim back from the government. So you'd base it on the February 2020 regular pay, which was £2,000 a month. You'd offer the employee furloughed leave at 80% of that, £1,600, and you would then put a claim into the government to claim back £1,600, plus the employer's national insurance, plus the minimum auto-enrolment pension contributions. You can offer more, but of course that will cost the business money. But you can get to a point where you get cost neutral. So to get cost neutral, you're going to take the February ordinary pay, and you're going to offer 80% of that as a furloughed leave payment, and then you're going to claim that back from the government. It's pretty straightforward when the staff are on a basic salary, paid the same every month, whether they're full-time or part-time. It's pretty straightforward that you can just take that salary before tax as of 28th of February on the payslip for February and calculate 80% of that, excluding any fees, commissions and bonuses. That's a dead straightforward calculation to do. And so for those employees, it's quite easy to calculate what their furlough pay should be. But not all employees are like that. And obviously, you could have employees whose pay varies. HMRC have given us a bit more guidance on how we could remain cost neutral. And to work out how we remain cost neutral, what we have to look at is what claim could we make on the job retention scheme. And once we know what claim we could make on the job retention scheme, we know what we could pay the employee as part of their furloughed leave payment. So the job retention scheme says we can make a subsidy claim if the employee has been employed for a full 12-month period prior to the claim. Then you can offer and you can claim for the hire of the same month's earnings from the previous year. And so let's say this is someone who's working on an hourly rate, and we're looking at the April 2020 payment. You could look back to April 19 and see how much you paid that person in April 19, and that would be the first figure to look at. You would then do a calculation the average monthly earning during the 2019-2020 tax year. So you get the P60 to the 5th of April 2020, work out what the average earnings were across those 12 months, and get a monthly figure for that. You take those two figures and you could offer the employee the hire of those two figures as their furloughed leave payment, because that's the claim you can make from the government in terms of a subsidy for that employee if that employee is going to be furloughed and not working for you. So if the employee's been working for less than a year, then you do exactly all you can do there. You haven't got the previous year's month's earnings, so all you can do there is look at the average earnings across the period that they've been working in the 2019-2020 tax year. And so let's say they were working for 6 months of that year and they earned £12,000 in that 6 months from you, then your average earnings would be £2,000 a month. Once you know what the average earnings are, then you can offer the employee who hasn't been with you for a full year 80% of that £2,000, £1,600, and you would remain cost neutral. The third scenario would be if you were an employee, if your employee only started in February 2020, then you would pro rata their earnings for February 2020 to work out what to claim. What I mean by that is, let's say you had an employee that started halfway through February 2020, and you paid them £1,000 for that half of February 2020. You could pro rata that up and say that their average earnings for a month is £2,000. You might have only paid them £1,000, but their average earnings, if they work a full month, will be £2,000. And you could afford to offer that employee £1,600, 80% of their average earnings, as a furloughed leave payment, and still remain cost neutral. Some of these calculations are not easy to establish because you might need to exclude fees, commissions and bonuses from those average earnings, and you need to work out how long the employee's been working. As much as I've given you that in a few words there, it's not always as easy as that to establish exactly what the employee's best or your best claim for subsidy would be, and therefore what's the best figure you could offer your employee to remain cost neutral. But if that becomes difficult, we can help you with those calculations. I'm now going to move on to what can you as the employer claim. I've gone through this a little bit when I've explained how you might optimise the employee's furlough leave, but you can claim 80% of the regular salary up to a maximum of £2,500 per month.
Yeah,
you can claim. Can I ask whoever's got their mic on to switch it off, please, or mute it for a little while? Yeah, you can claim 80% of employees' regular salary up to £2,500 per month, plus employers' national insurance, which may well be 13.8% of that figure, plus employers' pension, which may well be another 3% of that figure. And that will be a claim you would put in to the government for that particular employee. If they've been furloughed and they're not working, they're on temporary leave, they're not working, then that would be the maximum claim you could put into the government for that employee. How do you claim? There's going to be an online portal, according to HMRC, by mid-April. The portal obviously isn't ready at the moment, and so as soon as we see how that portal will look, then we will be able to tell you more as to how easy or difficult it is going to be to submit subsidy claims for each of your employees. You will need to calculate the amount you're claiming, and it will be on it sounds like it'll be like on a self-assessment basis. You'll tell HMRC how much you're claiming and for which employees and for what periods, and HMRC will then pay you. You will leave your bank details on the online portal, so HMRC pay you. HMRC, they will then have the right, as they do with self-assessment or your corporation tax returns, they'll have the right to retrospectively audit all aspects of your claim. So it sounds like they're going to speed through the claim and probably pay it out, and then they're going to come back and decide whether they need to look and audit your claim. So it's very important you keep all the calculations that support your claim. So it may well be that you'll get this money, and a bit later on you'll have an inquiry from HMRC to audit the claim that you've made. How can we help? Well, obviously we can help you with deciding whether you want to furlough staff or not. We can help you find the optimum furlough agreement for you and your staff, the figure that allows you to pay your staff that you want to keep on and you want to retain in your business, and you're going to bring back to your business when the COVID-19 crisis is all over. We can help you find an optimum figure. That means there's going to be no cost to the company, and the employee is going to get the best figure they can out of it. We can obviously help you decide if you want to offer your employees more than that. If you want to go above the 80%, we can help you decide whether you can afford to do that and what the costings of that would be. We can help you with the submission of the claim in due course. You can do that yourself. We can help you with that, and I suspect, you know, in general, that's going to come from the payroll system. So if we are doing your payroll for you, we will be able to submit those claims for you. If we're not doing your payroll for you, I would still think we can help you with the claims. If you want us to, we can provide you with a bespoke fixed price for doing either of those two services for you. It will depend very much on whether your employees are clearly furloughed across the period. It will depend whether they've got a fixed salary or a variable salary, how difficult it is to calculate, how difficult it is to get to the optimum position, whether you want to get to the optimum position as well. But we'll be able to, depending on your individual circumstances, be able to give you a costing for putting in those claims and getting back that subsidy from the government for you. Within my notes after this, I do have a number of examples that I might refer to when we have a few questions, but they'll all be in the notes for you to see. I'll just go through the very first example because I've sort of covered that as we went through, but I've got 5 or 6 different examples in the background as to how the calculation is carried out and how you remain cost neutral. So in the very first example I've got here, an employee on a regular salary of 24,000 at 28th of February 2020 receives £2,000 a month. The maximum claim you can put in is 80% of that, £2,000 to a maximum of £2,500. So in this case, it's £1,600. So if you were to offer the employee furloughed leave on £1,600, then you will be cost neutral. I run a number of other examples of this sort of thing afterwards, and if anyone's questions are particular to those examples, then I'll bring them up. Otherwise, I won't bring them up at the moment. I'll allow anyone to ask any questions they've got at the moment. So if you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself and start asking.
Hi Peter, it's Carol here.
Hi Peter.
Hi Carol, can I deal with you first then, Carol?
Okay, I'm sure you've probably in a roundabout way answered this question. I have an employee who works on 2 totally different sites for 2 of my clients separately. One of them has shut down, so she can't work there, but she is being asked to carry on working at the other site. Am I able to furlough her for one of the sites that she doesn't work for?
No, it's an all or nothing. It's you have to have laid off the employee completely, and if you laid them off completely and put them on furloughed leave, then you can claim the subsidy, but it doesn't work if you put them on a reduced hours or reduced pay. I suppose there could be an argument, which I haven't seen in the guidance, and I'm sure the guidance hasn't covered yet, to say you've got 2 employment contracts there, exactly. one for one place and one for the other. Do you actually have 2 employment contracts?
Yes.
Right. I don't think that the guidance has gone far enough to show whether you could actually furlough one of those 2 contracts. The guidance is nowhere near that detailed at the moment. When the legislation comes out, it may be possible to do that, but at the moment, from the guidance, it's an all or nothing. So it doesn't sound like it will be possible. Okay, thanks. I've just seen someone. Hi, Mike. Can I just answer one of the queries someone's just said? Are a copy of the slides going to be available after the webinar? Yes, all you need to do is put your email address in the chat box, and then Tom will send you on a copy of the slides and also a copy of our furloughed leave template for your employees. So if you want to do that at any stage, Tom will then send those both on to you after this meeting. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Peter. Thanks very much for your time today. It's been really helpful. My question was, in the event that we rehired someone that we had laid off within the date frame that you said, could you just run through the process of you rehire them and then you put them out to furlough, and what the reappointment position is, and do they need to work their month's notice? So in our case, we made someone redundant, they'd worked out their notice, we brought them back in, put them under furlough, and then we will, when they obviously at the end of furlough, they'll come back in. I presume they'll be a normal employee and be entitled to their full month's notice.
Yeah, you would think that would be the case, Mike. Obviously, you've got the option to go back to anyone that you've laid off up to the 1st of March and bring them back as a furloughed leaver. Now, the furloughed leave agreement allows you to call, it puts these people on temporary leave, and it allows you to call them back to work for you under their normal employment contract at 1 day's notice or 1 week's notice from whenever you want to call them back. At that stage, they're coming back into their normal employment contract. So I would have thought at that stage they're just back to the employment contract they were in the first place, and if you were going to lay them off, you'd have to go through the normal route all over again.
Cool, thank you. And my second question was whether employees who are on furlough are allowed to work for other companies.
It's a difficult question because in your furloughed leave agreement, if you look at the template that we've produced, we've said that if anyone is going to go off and work for another company, they have to have told you before, and you have to give them express permission to do that. The reason we put that in there is that the guidance is, as I say, just guidance at this stage. It's not the legislation, and we were a little worried that the legislation might say that if you go and get another job, you're not entitled to subsidy. The employer's not entitled to subsidy. So we didn't want to leave any of our small business owners in a position that they might lose their subsidy because their employee went off and got another job. So in our template, we're saying that you have to tell the employer beforehand, and the employer would then say yes or no to that extra job. I think it's just a slight risk that the legislation isn't written yet, so we don't know whether someone will, that would stop your subsidy from happening. It doesn't sound like it would, but there are other things to consider in all of that. Obviously, within your furlough agreement, you're probably going to want to have these employees come back to you, with a day's notice or maybe a week's notice. If they've gone and got another job and they've got to give a couple of weeks' notice to leave that job, they're not going to be able to come back to you that easily. And so I'm not necessarily suggesting that everyone should go off and get another job while they're on furloughed leave, but because of those reasons.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Peter, it's Richard Hilson.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Sorry, I'm not on the webinar, but I am on the call, and I was on a few minutes ago, so apologies for that. I was going to discuss something. My question is because we have two directors in our firm, and they are some employees as well. Now, my question relates to how we work. So, you mentioned directors can continue to do statutory duties. That's fine. I just wanted to clarify that obviously we're maintaining our books, not much to maintain at the moment because there's not much to do. Presumably that's part of that.
Yeah, I think that would be considered part of the statutory responsibilities. I think where you would lose your ability to claim a subsidy would be if you were doing anything that was going to produce a service for the company or generate income. So generating income is pretty easy. If you go and do some work, then you're going to generate income. You're going to not be furloughed. But there is an argument to say that if you started doing, I don't know, some marketing for future contracts, that might affect your ability to furlough. So depending on how vital that furloughed leave payment is, you might choose to not do that at that stage. It's very subjective at the moment, because if you read the company law of what a director's statutory duty is, it's to make the best possible case for the company is one of the statutory duties. Well, that may well be to go out and market the company in the best possible way. So it might even be that you could go out and do that marketing, and that would still fall under your statutory duties rather than your employment contract as a consultant doing the work in your case.
Okay, but so linked to that is a question that, so, and it wouldn't necessarily be through marketing, but so if a contract took place before this scheme and COVID-19 ended, what would happen then? So if a contract came along and you said, right, yes, I'll take a contract with you, I don't need, so I'm employed again. How does the scheme deal with this?
Okay, so furloughed leave, I didn't cut, sorry, I should have covered this in the presentation. Furloughed leave must be for a minimum of 3 weeks. So if you decided to furlough yourself and then you got a contract and went back to work, if that furloughed leave was less than 3 weeks, then you wouldn't qualify for the subsidy. You could go back to work and take that contract on, but you just wouldn't qualify for the subsidy.
Right.
Your furloughed leave must be a minimum of 3 weeks.
Okay, but it's already been 4 weeks, I suppose, now, hasn't it?
Yeah, but of course, what you should have had, and you would want to put in place is a written agreement between you and the company to say that you've been furloughed. That, again, that's going to be important, because when HMRC come along and audit these claims, one of the things they're going to ask for is, where's the agreement between the company and the employee? It's going to be, if the claims are going to be repaid, that was going to be the most likely way that they're going to be able to get the money back. And I think that HMRC may well look at these claims in quite a lot of detail, because it's pretty apparent that there's sort of there's an underground of businesses, that the sorts of businesses that might not declare all their income, might think that their cash income, it doesn't need to be declared. There's an undercurrent of those businesses that might well try to say, well, actually, I'm going to get these subsidies and I'm going to get my employees to work. And if that undercurrent is big enough, then that's going to allow HMRC to put enough resource to go and check, every subsidy claim. So I think for anyone that's doing this properly, so they are furloughing their staff, they are laying them off, it's important to get the bits of paperwork in place. And the key bit of paperwork that needs to be in place is that agreement with the approval of the employee of the amendment to the employment contract. Whether you've written a written employment contract in the past or you've just got a verbal one, let's have a written agreement to furlough the staff, and let's have a confirmation from the employee that they agree to that process.
Okay, but sorry, I don't want to absorb all the Q&A time, but so if a contract came in mid-April, or let's say mid-May, end of May, assuming the scheme was still running, and that's a fairly safe assumption, I think, perhaps at this time, you would then just notify the government and say, well, assuming that you're already on the scheme and it was working, I wish to come off the scheme. Is that how it would work? Or
what happened? Your furlough agreement. So in some ways, I could have gone through the template of the furloughed agreement. I did that in one of the earlier webinars we ran last week, but that would have probably taken too long to do again. So the furloughed agreement states that you're going to be put on temporary leave, and you could be called back to come to work with a day's notice. And so at any stage, you're on furloughed leave now, but you could end that at any stage with a day's notice. Now, if that meant that, you've got another contract, so you were going to come back to work and you're going to start working, then the furloughed leave agreement would end within a day of you knowing that. So if that furloughed leave period from the date you started your furloughed leave to when it stopped, which could be any date, it doesn't have to be the end of COVID-19, it could be because you've got a contract during COVID-19. If that furloughed leave period is more than 3 weeks, then you can make a claim. If it's less than 3 weeks, you can't. If it happens to go across 2 months, you'll make a claim for 1 month. And then you'll make a claim for the second month for only part of that month, to the point that you're no longer furloughed. And so once you're working again, then you can't be furloughed and you can't claim for a subsidy. but you'll make these claims on a monthly basis for however many furloughed staff you've got over whatever period that they're furloughed in that month.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that make sense, Richard?
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any further questions?
I have a question now. Yes, it's Veronica here.
Hi, Veronica.
My question was, there was a confusion created amongst the people I've been speaking to about this. Was on the Gov.uk website, it says the scheme runs for 3 months from the 1st of March. Other people are interpreting this that it's for 3 months. So if we were to put somebody on furlough from 1st of April, we only have 2 months subsidy, not the 3 months, right?
Yeah, so you're only going to get the subsidy. You're only going to get the subsidy from the date that the employee is on furloughed leave, so not working for you. Now you do have, if someone's not working for you, you do have the right to go back and, let's say you said to them, don't come into work anymore from the 1st of March. You do have the right to go back to that time to furlough them from there. You didn't know on the 1st of March that furloughed leave applied, but you could go back retrospectively. If they weren't working for you, and they definitely weren't working for you, you could go back to that date and then furlough leave them from that time and claim the subsidy if you were going to pay them their wages during that time. If you had all of your employees working until the 1st of April and you furloughed either one or all of them or some of them, then you would put your claim in from the date that you furloughed them. So from the 1st of April to, let's say, the 30th of April, when you pay them again, you'd put in a claim for that month for those employees that were on furloughed leave, and the government would pay you the 80% of their regular salary plus the employer's national insurance plus the pension contributions. And you do that on a monthly basis. Now, the government have said that this scheme will run for 3 months initially. Obviously, the likelihood is if COVID-19 still means that there are a lot of businesses unable to open in 3 months' time, it's almost inevitable it's going to be extended on from that. If it's all over in 3 months, then that may be the end of the agreement. But at the moment, it's guaranteed to run for 3 months, according to the Chancellor, bearing in mind that it isn't legislation at the moment. And he did say he would put as much as it took to get this problem solved. So if that meant that there were still employees on furloughed leave because you couldn't get back to work after that 3 month period, then you would expect the Chancellor to extend it on for a number of months after that.
Okay, because what my worry was that we are obviously preparing a template for when we do have to issue it to staff members, and we had obtained a template from somebody else where they had said that the staff were put on 3 months starting from the 1st of April, but that's currently not guaranteed. From the 1st of April, it's only 2 months guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't think. If you have a look at our furloughed agreement, and I'm not saying that this is the best furloughed agreement in the world. As I say, we're not lawyers and we're not HR consultants. But our furloughed agreement says you're on temporary leave, and we can't tell you how long that temporary leave is going to be because we don't know how long the COVID-19 crisis is going to carry on. So it says you're on temporary leave, and that would end with 1 day's notice or 1 week's, depends on your business a bit, but let's say 1 day's notice. So you put these people on temporary leave and say, I don't want you to come into work, and I'm going to pay you furlough pay at maybe 80% of your wages or maybe 100, depending on circumstances. But we're going to give you 1 day's notice of when we want you to come back into work and start working for us on your normal employment contract again. So our furloughed leave agreement doesn't run for 3 months, it runs for an indeterminate period. It runs for this temporary period of leave. And I can't quite see why someone would make a temporary period of leave exactly 3 months long, because no one knows how long the crisis is going to go on.
Exactly, but I think were referring to the wording that was used by the Chancellor, where it will be for 3 months. Doesn't matter when you start the 3 months, but I think you have to start from the 1st of March. That's why we were that. I mean, the wording in our letter was just saying that in May, that we're putting them on furlough, which currently guarantees 80% of their earnings for the 3 months. But we will have to take that off because there will not 3 months. It will be further 2 months. We'll just completely take that out.
Yeah. I mean, the furloughed agreement, you can amend the furloughed agreement at any stage. So it could well be that you'll put someone on furloughed leave, and a bit further down the line, you'll decide to lay them off. All the furloughed leave is doing is keeping them in their employment contracts and allowing them to come back to work at some stage in the future.
Actually, you've just touched on something very interesting, because a friend of mine has been laid off before all of this has started. I mean, just before the announcement from the Chancellor. So they have been made redundant. Then literally 5 days later, there was the announcement. So they've asked for the job back on terms of furlough. And the employer had said fine. So they've taken her back.
Yeah.
So that she can receive 80% of her salary.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect.
It is, right? Because her job doesn't have to be guaranteed to her right now, right? She can still be let go at the end of the furlough period.
She doesn't have to accept the furlough, does she? She could say, well, no, I want my redundancy. That's what you offered me in the first place.
But she asked for it because that was much better offer for her to have 3 months of 80% of earnings rather than very small payout. Because she wasn't.
I don't know that they could necessarily guarantee the furlough period would last for 3 months because it would last until the employer decides to change the furloughed agreement. I mean, I think that most furloughed agreements will be for an indeterminate period of time, because it may well be that you put these employees on furloughed leave and then a bit further down the line, your company's going to go into liquidation, the contract's going to be over, or you decide that actually you don't need them anymore, you're going to make them redundant or lay them off. So it's odd to be having the furloughed agreement for exactly 3 months.
Yeah, but what I mean is that their employer is not obliged to take her back at the end of whenever this goes away. The government is like, right, you stopping the scheme, you can all go back to work now, and the company that she works for is not obliged to take her back. They can still make her redundant right there and then, right? Without having penalties of not being able to claim the money back.
She's still under her employment contract, as far as I understand. I said I'm not an employment lawyer to tell you for certain, Veronica, but the idea of furloughed leave is that you are keeping these people on their employment contract. So you're just putting them on a temporary period where you're paying them 80% of their wages not to come to work. But at the end of that temporary period, they're back on their employment contract again. And so if you wanted to get rid of them at the end of the furloughed leave period, you would be getting rid of them under their normal employment contract. And certainly we've seen some instances where you might have had an employee, let's say at the moment for 1 year and 9 months, and if you put them on furloughed leave for another 3 months, if they were on furloughed leave for another 3 months, they may well at the end of that period be entitled to redundancy, whereas before they started the furloughed leave, they wouldn't have been. And so there will be some instances where the employer will decide to actually not put the employee on furloughed leave, but actually lay them off rather than put them on furloughed leave and risk having to pay them redundancy in 3 months' time.
Okay, that's really good to know. Okay, thank you.
No problem at all.
Hi Peter, it's Lee Thorpe here.
Hi Lee, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for continuing to make sense of what's going on for us as best we can. It's just a quick question. Where, as a working director, I've furloughed myself, and still able to carry out administrative tasks like paying the staff, answering tax, managing the accounts.
Yeah, I think those things that are your statutory duties as a director are fine. If you end up with a lot of, let's say you were doing a lot of bookkeeping, there's an argument to say that you're providing a service to the company. So, you know, you don't necessarily want to be in a position where you're having every day to go in and do the books and sort things out. It may well be in the very short term, you need to do that to get everyone paid and get everything in place. And then you would furlough yourself pretty much soon after that, because there wouldn't be that same need to do all those things going forwards.
Okay, well, it's only monthly managing wage roll and
yeah, I
minor
think those sorts of things are the monthly. Oh, I've got to pay the wages because they're all on furloughed leave. I can't see that the government are going to particularly argue about that. Especially if, you know, we do all the calculation for you. All you're literally doing is doing the payment anyway, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Stay safe.
Okay. Cheers, Lee.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Sheets for much of the others.
Hi, sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
It's Scott speaking. I don't know if you can. Just sorry, the question is, if you've issued temporary contracts to your employees and you've put them on 4-day weeks instead of 5-day weeks, if further down the line, if this continues for another few months, and if you needed to move those or specific individuals, if not all, onto a furlough contract, would you be able to furlough them onto their original contract versus their temporary contract?
Well, the way the calculation is at the moment, you look at, I'm just going to do the simplest example. If these had a regular salary at February 2020, then the calculation at the moment says that the government will pay you back 80% of that regular salary at February 2020. So if that was a 5-day week, and in my example, I had up the regular salary was £24,000 or £2,000 a month, then that would be the calculation that you would use to calculate how much subsidy you could get. So I don't, in that case, I don't think it matters that you've moved them on to a 4-day week a bit later. I think it's a matter that you would use the February 2020 figure to calculate the subsidy that you could get.
Perfect, thank you. I mean, technically, I think that was the logic we were going to follow, because they've been on the same normal contract up until end of March. It's only as of the 1st of April we'll switch them to the 4-day, and it would only be a February if it happened further down the line. But yeah, my understanding was because it's 1st of March that you're allowed to qualify, it would have been what their payroll was in February. But
that's exactly what the guidance says at the moment. But bear in mind, Scott, that's the guidance. It's not the legislation at the moment, but that is what the guidance says. The legislation, when it comes through, might say something slightly different. We don't know as yet. And that's why it's worthwhile keeping up to date with any amendments to the guidance. So I gave you the link in our notes. Just have a look at that link. It'll be pretty easy when you look at that link to see where the guidance on how to calculate pay is. If that starts to change, which it could do, then you might have to think again.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem. Any more questions? We've still got a lot of people on the call. Any more questions? Okay, if you would, if you want the notes, please leave your email address in the chat box. If you want a copy of the template, please leave your email address in the chat box. If you've got any questions that you need to ask me or any of our portfolio managers, please get in contact with them. We will run further webinars on this after there's an update to the guidance. If you found it useful, it would be really useful if you could leave us a review on Google to tell the world how useful it is. Otherwise, I'm going to end this meeting now, and everybody stay safe. Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
I'll just let anyone who wants to put their email address in, put it in there, and we'll end the meeting in a minute or two.